Good morning and welcome. My name is Rodet Yila and I'm a biokineticist at the High Performance Center of the Sports Science Institute of South Africa. Thanks for joining me on this Totalsports ripped page where we are going to be going through a 45-minute exercise session that is a functional based exercise class. The idea of this is to get through a series of exercises that will start off with a slow and controlled movements that are typically more complex. Then we ramp up the intensity a little bit and we go through a couple of faster movements aiming for frequency. As always, we finish up the session with a little bit of a finisher, and that will be a bit of a combination of two exercises for today. So, for those of you who have joined us before, you should know what this is more or less about. For those of you who are new, please make sure that if you do have any injuries or concerns, such as a shoulder injury, a back issue, or a knee niggle, please make sure that you do not force through the movement. Rather stop and follow the instructions given to you by your physiotherapist or biokineticist. Otherwise, if you're not sure what to do, rather revert to an exercise that you were previously able to do in this session, so that you don't stand around waiting for the next exercise to pop up, but more importantly, that you don't aggravate your injury. So to get started, we will need to run through our list of equipment for today. So I'll be using a weighted backpack. I've loaded some weights into here to make it a challenging resistance, and please make sure that whichever object you're using has a solid strap. Then you will also need a exercise mat or a towel that you can use to lay on. This will be for the exercise where we're laying flat on our back or on our stomach. This will provide a little bit of cushioning from the ground. Then you'll also need a dowel stick or a broomstick. It's basically anything that you can hold onto that is firm. And lastly, you will need some sort of raised platform. The idea of this will be something that is stable enough to hold your body weight. We'll be performing a couple of exercises using this, but the idea of it will be to make sure that it is raised off the ground. Doesn't need to be too high, something that is around about knee height or maybe to mid shin, but not too high, so you're going to have to find something that's on your hip height and so on. So to get started, we'll go through a little bit of a warm-up. We'll start off with a little bit of skipping, and from there we'll progress to jogging. So if you don't have skipping ropes, you can just do like what I'm going to do, and I'm going to pretend I've got skipping ropes in my hand. If you do have skipping ropes, that's fine. You can continue as is, but essentially we're just hopping on the spot. We can pretend by swinging our arms around, and we'll get started with the warm-up to increase our body temperature, get our heart rates up, as well as our breathing rates. Last couple of seconds. Good, and relax. Next up, we're going to do a little bit of a jog. So I'll start off with a jog that will be on the spot. If you would like, you can jog around whenever you'll be training today. Please make sure you don't venture too far away from your laptop or cell phone. Otherwise, it will be difficult to hear when we need to move on to the next one. So starting with the easy jog, I'll jog on the spot. So this is all just to prepare ourselves for the session that we're about to get stuck into. We need to make sure that if you just rolled out of bed, you have loosened up and primed your body to get ready. For those of you who are doing this session a little bit late in the day, hopefully you would have had time to wake up a little bit. But nevertheless, it's still important to get through a proper warm-up. So from here, you can jog up at the back. So it's just kicking up for butt kicks. and then we'll go with high knees. Good. Right, so hopefully you all warmed up by now. What we'll do next is we'll go into a couple of dynamic stretches as well as mobility work. So starting off at the top, we'll pull our arms in opposite diagonal patterns. The idea is to open up the chest while pulling your shoulder blades together at the back. So we'll go for 10 per side. It should be a relatively quick movement, but more importantly, you're focusing on pulling your shoulder blades together at the back and opening your chest as much as possible. And that's 10. Good. So from there, if you do need help with balance, we'll go into leg swings. You can hold on to a wall or a couch that's next to you. Otherwise, if you are comfortable standing on the spot, you plant one foot, swing the other leg as high as you can, forwards and backwards. You can use your hands for counterbalance. So it's swinging in the front and at the back. We'll go for 10 per side. Good. From there, we'll move on. You're going to have a seat on the mat. We'll place our feet shoulder width apart. And the idea will be from here, you place your hands behind your back so that when I drop both knees to the ground, I'll lift one hand, bring it around, and you're reaching through that keyhole that is created by the other hand behind your back. You want to lower your shoulder towards the ground. So from here, it's lowering the shoulder towards the ground, and then over to the other side. Then we'll continue moving for 3 per side. Right, so that's 3, and then what you'll do is you'll get into a half kneeling position with one leg out to the side. So we're going to point our toes in the same direction that we're pointing our elbows. So with one hand forward, you keep your weight on the arm, place your hand behind your head, and if your elbow is pointing forward there, your toes will point forward as well. As I open my chest to lift the elbows up, you'll get your toes pointing to the ceiling, and you try to open up the chest as much as possible. All the way up and down, you should feel a slight stretch in your groin region or your adductors. So you're opening up the back as well as the hips. This will be 5 per side. Great. So from there, we'll go into a couple of movements to get us ready for the main component of the session. So the next couple of movements might seem challenging for some, but I will provide you with a couple of modifications. So starting off, we'll go into a theory Superman. So before we go through what the full demonstration will be, if you're new to this exercise, the Superman by itself will be good enough because we are essentially just trying to get into the pelvic stabilizers. So you'll start off on hands and knees with your knees shoulder width apart directly underneath your hips, then your hands shoulder width apart directly underneath your shoulders. From here, the Superman movement will be pushing the heel out at the back. You're trying to straighten the leg. You are squeezing the glutes to get the heel up level with your shoulders and hips. And the front will be the hand, but it's the opposite hand. So right hand left hand and right foot. And as you retract, get back to your starting position, switch over, and you go to the other side. So it will be right hand with left foot. If you are able to, you're going to the theory position, which means that you bring your toes down, lift the knees up, but it's not lifting the hips too high. So it's just to clear the ground. From here, you're doing the same movement, opposite sides, out, and then slowly changing. All right, so you have your two options. The first option will be with your knees down, second option with your knees up. You need to get through 3 per side, and it's always good to remember the slower the better. So I'll go through the theory version. Good. From there, we'll go into a judo push-up into toe touch. So it will be one judo push-up into a toe touch on the right and then the left hand side. So your modifications will be the modified push-up when you are on your knees. If you are able to, you will do the full version, but we demonstrate the modified version starts with your knees down, hips back, bring your nose towards the ground. From there, lift the chest up as you flatten or lower your hips, and then you must do the reverse to get back there. You reach as far as you can, past your knee on both sides. That will be one repetition. If you are able to do the full version, you're in your push-up position, put your feet shoulder width apart, and from there, hips start back. You lower your nose towards the ground, you get to the top. If you can, you reverse, and then you do your toe touch. If you aren't able to reverse from this position, just bring your hips right to the back and go straight into the toe touch. Right, so for that one, we need to do 5, and it's 1 judo push-up with a toe touch on each side. So I'll do the normal version. And that's 5. Right, that's halfway through our warm-up bit. We've got 2 more movements to get through. The first one will involve a little bit of balance, but please don't make it too much of a balance exercise. So the idea will be to stand on one leg while you extend with your heel, similar to what we did with Superman, except we're pushing our hips backwards. That allows a little bit of a stretch on the back of the thighs. That will be your hamstring muscles. As we're reaching with our chest, the hands go forward and you drive the hips forward to get your hips to do the work and not your lower back. So think of your hips moving back and then standing up will be your hips moving forward. You need to do 5 per leg. Please make sure that you're controlling the movement. If you struggle with balance, the modification for that will be to keep your toes down. We're not putting our weight onto the back leg. It's just to put your toes down to balance. And we're still working through that front leg as we reach and then stand up. So it will still be 5%. All right, so getting ready for this one. side, I'll go over to the other side. Good. And then going into our final warm-up exercise, we have overhead squats. So the overhead squat, you need to get a hold of your dial stick or your broomstick. The idea for this is to keep the dial stick directly above your head while you sit as deep as possible. Please make sure that you are squatting with a good technique rather than aiming for depth and compromising your technique. So to quickly talk you through this one, what you'll do is you'll place the dial stick in your hip line. So that's basically the point at which if you lean forward, it will lock in your hip line. You'll hold out from there, and ideally the dial stick should remain in the same position. So from there, we're keeping the dial stick directly above our head. We assume our squat position. So for those of you who have joined us before, you know that you don't have to keep your toes pointed forward. It's a matter of following your toes with your knees. So you don't want your knees to point forward if your toes are pointing outwards. And if my toes are pointing outwards, my knees must follow in that line out there. So it will be 5 squats where you're pushing your hips backwards and you sit into a deep squat. And if you are able to, you'll get right down to the bottom. If you struggle, please make sure that at the point which your chest starts falling forward or your heels start lifting, you rather stop at that point, and that will be a squat dip. And you continue with the more practice, you'll get better with your range. So don't force yourself, you're going to go all the way down like that, because that wouldn't be considered good technique. So ideally, we're controlling the dial stick. If I need to, I'll stop there, and that will be my squat dip. If I am able to, I sit right down to the bottom, and I stand from there. So we'll do 5 squats. If you want to, you can hang around at the bottom for a little bit, just to help with the mobility. So starting off, getting down and controlling up. Always driving through your heels, squeezing your glutes to stand. Like I said, if you want to, you can hang around at the bottom for a little bit, and then you'll stand up. Good. So that concludes our warm-up. Hopefully you have built up a little bit of sweat, but you shouldn't be getting fatigued at this point. So quickly grab a drink of water, and then we'll get started with the first exercise of the primary limb. So starting off, we'll grab our weighted object, and what you'll do is you'll place your raised platform nearby. If you do need it, you'll be able to use it. If not, you can continue as is. So the reason I say if you do need it is because this will be a matter of your squat depth. If you do have good mobility in your lower back, hips, knees, and ankles, you should be able to get down with a relative ease. However, because we are loading in front, you should find that it's actually easier to get down lower than normal. So from here, you're keeping the object as close as possible. You can hug it or you can cradle it at the bottom, whichever is easiest for you. Please make sure that when you sit down, it's as deep as possible, keeping your shoulders pulled back. From there, you hold for 2 to 3 seconds, and then you stand up. If you need your raised platform, what you'll do is you'll position it so that you can keep your feet in your ideal position. From there, as I sit backwards and downwards, I can tap the object, and then I stand up. You're not resting on the object. That is just going to be used as a reference so that you know how deep down you're going. So we're doing 5 repetitions, and after that, we'll go into your next exercise demo. So starting off, it's a nice deep squat, keeping your shoulders back. From there, you drive upwards, getting your hips forward. that's fine. Moving into our next exercise, if you want, you can reposition the platform in front of your mat, so that's your left and your back. And what you'll need to do is start off with one heel on the platform, the other leg is straight. The idea is to adjust your knee angle so that you can feel that your knee is about to be straightened. With this exercise, we are doing 5 repetitions with one leg, then we'll do 5 repetitions with the other leg, and finish up 5 repetitions with both legs. So it will be a glute hamstring bridge complex where we're going for 5 repetitions, switching over 5 repetitions, and then finishing up with 5 repetitions. So for those of you new to this, push down into your heel to lift your hips up, keep the hips level so that they don't tilt, and you're not allowed to swing the other leg to help with momentum. Ideally, be keeping the knees level. So it will be up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I change over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 2 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. So that's the second exercise. And wrapping up with our third exercise, we need to grab our weighted object. For this, you will have a couple of options. So we're going to be using our raised platform again. However, your options will be to keep both feet flat or to raise one foot. When you're doing this exercise, it's important to make sure that we don't start tilting at the hips. So we're not trying to overly rotate like that. It's just a matter of pulling the elbow back and controlling back down. So that would be the row position, but the importance is stabilizing your pelvis. So when you are placing your hand onto the raised platform, make sure that your hips aren't flipped like that. So you do actually need to squeeze your glutes, stabilize around the pelvis, and from here, you are rowing with one side. If you can, what you'll do is you'll lift the other leg. So if my right hand is doing the work, my left leg will be up, and from here, you're performing the row with a little bit more stability required to keep that hip level and keep your pelvis stabilized. So that will be 5 per side. Please make sure that it's a slow and controlled movement for the row. You're not rushing through to get through the movement as quickly as possible. So stabilizing, what I'll do is I'll start off lifting one leg and I'm performing my rows. Going over to the other side. Alright, so fairly simple for this morning. Those 3 exercises will need to be repeated for another 2 sets each, and you need to follow them in the same order that we did now. So for those of you who feel comfortable with those 3 exercises, please feel free to continue. Remember your numbers is 5 repetitions for your goblet squat, 5 per mode for your glute hamstring bridge complex. So it will be 5 with one leg, 5 with the other leg, and then 5 with 2 legs, and then largely 5 per side with your rows. If you did struggle with that, what we're going to do now is go through a couple of modifications just to try and ease you into it a little bit more. So this time I'm going to keep my raised platform here, and I'll be doing the movement just to touch and get a feel for my squat depth. So always important to get your squat stance ready. So feet in the preferred position, object nice and close to you, and then from there, you're pushing your hips backwards and downwards just to touch, and that gives you a feel of how deep down you're going. So in that position, I get an idea of where 90 degrees is, or just below 90 degrees is to my knees, and you're slowly building your confidence to get into a deeper position as we transition. So that would be your 5 for that exercise. Then going into your glutes hamstrings complex. Once again, getting into our bend knee position. However, if you felt that it was too tough when your legs were a little bit straighter or more extended, what you need to do then is sit a little bit closer so that your knees are a little bit more bent. The knee angle will dictate how much work is required from your glutes and your hamstrings. Where the straighter your leg, the more your hamstrings have to work. So now we're just going to get a little bit more help from our glutes. So we'll bend the knees a little bit more. From here, we go for 5 with one leg. Then 5 on the other leg. Always driving downwards to get the hips up. And finishing up 5 with 2 legs. And as you're driving down, make sure you're squeezing your glutes. Then your hips all the way up. Alright, so to finish up our rows, what I'll do this time is keep both feet down. From here, if you did struggle, make sure that you squeeze our glutes and then pull the elbow as high as possible. Control the weight back down. We'll switch over to the other side. Okay, so that's the modified version. If you do feel that you are a little bit more confident, please continue at your own pace. For the last one, what I'll do is go through the normal versions once again to make sure that if you are stepping up your difficulty, you have another look at what you are supposed to be doing. And for those of you who were continuing in your own time, this is just for you to use as a reference to see that you're doing the right thing. So, going back into our goblet squats, we're sitting into a deep squat, hold for 2 to 3 seconds, and then stand from there. So the idea of this is to make sure that your hips are lowered as close to your heels as possible, and we are not compromising our technique. Going back into your glutes, hamstrings, bridge complex, we're going to go back into a slightly more extended or straightened knee. From here, you should feel that the hamstrings are doing a little bit more work. And it's also important to note that when you're doing this exercise, you don't want your toes to fall outwards. Your toes must always be pointed directly straight in front of you, rather than allowing it to fall outside. And to wrap up our rows from the Superman position, okay, so if you've got through that, well done. We'll have a quick water break and then we'll move into our next bit. So for those of you who have joined us before, you know what the Metcon is all about. For the newcomers, Metcon is essentially a metabolic conditioning series where we're looking to get through a couple of high intensity movements. The idea is to work through the movements in your own time, but you are trying to make sure that you're not resting for too long. So for this morning, what we'll do is we'll go through a series of 3 exercise combinations, and for that, we are looking to get through 3 rounds of those 3 exercises as well. So starting off, you're going to lay flat on your back. The first station, if I refer to it as that, will be a butterfly crunch, followed by a bicycle crunch for each side. So when you're laying flat on your back, with your legs out in front of you, it's just out off the ground, your hands are up above your head, just off the ground. From there, you're crunching to touch the ankles, going back into that extended position, and then it's opposite sides for the bicycle crunch. What you need to do is 3 repetitions of that, where it's 1 butterfly crunch into a bicycle crunch on each side, followed by the next butterfly crunch and bicycle crunch. So from there, once we've done our 3 movements, we'll grab our weighted object and we'll go into the Turkish get-up. So for the Turkish get-up, what we'll need to do is lay flat on our back. With the weight in your left hand, you'll place your left knee in a bent position. From here, hands out to the side. As you extend into the upright seated position, we're driving through our heel to get the hips up. From there, you bring the right knee underneath the hips to get your pillar in place to stand. From here, reversing the order. So this is still my left hand. I'm going down onto my right knee. From there, I place my right hand down. You get your hips up and straighten your right leg. Sit down and flatten your back again. We'll need to perform 3 of those per side, and then you'll get into your last bit, which will be weighted Russian twist, where your option will be keep both feet down, lift 1 foot, or lift both feet. Whichever option you choose, you must make sure that your feet do not move side to side. So while you are performing your twist, you can't keep your legs moving as a counterbalance. You have to make sure that if I decide to keep my legs up, I'm keeping them in the same position as I rotate my chest from side to side, lifting the object up and down. So once you've done 3 per side, that will be the end of the leg one. So it will seem fairly long because of the Turkish get-up component. For those of you who are new to it, please make sure that you watch my demonstration. I will try to break it up as much as possible because it is a very confusing move. So getting through from the start, once everyone's ready, we're starting off with the butterfly crunch into the bicycle crunches. So getting ready to start, 3, 2, 1. It's 1 butterfly crunch into a bicycle crunch on each side. Back number 2, and then 3. Good. Grab the weighted object. We'll go up into the Turkish get-up. So from there, we're getting the hips up, knee underneath, and then stand. It's important to ensure that the object stays directly above your head and you're not rushing through the movement. You're following my steps. Last one, getting up in the crunch, driving the hips up, getting the knee underneath, and standing. All right, moving over to the other side. Once you finish on the left, and this is the last one. Well done. Finishing up with our Russian twist. 3 per side. Remember, you want to challenge yourself as much as possible. So over here, I'm going to be working up. There's a touch. Get my chest across and touch. And that's it. Well done. Have a quick water break before we wrap up with our finisher. So while you're having a water break, I'll describe the area that we need for the finisher. So starting off, we'll need our raised platform. Once again, I want to stress that it is important to make sure that it's a stable object that you can actually step onto. If it is something that you're not sure if you can step onto, please make sure that you don't put all of your weight through it as you're getting across. So we'll be doing a bench step over here. And what you'll also need is a stable surface to lean against, ideally a wall. If you are using a couch, please make sure that the couch doesn't slide away from under you. Or if you are using a door, please make sure that no one's going to be opening that door, causing you to fall through. So for your step-ups, what you'll be doing is keeping our weighted object directly above our head. If you aren't able to keep it directly above your head, because of either the object being too heavy or not enough space above you, you can keep it in front of you, and that way it will still remain weighted. So from here, what we'll be doing is driving through the leg. You need to make sure that if I'm driving through one leg, there's enough space for you to step on with the other leg to absorb your weight and slowly get you to the ground. So from here, you're stepping up and getting over, and it's continuously back and forward with the weight object either at your chest or directly above your head. So I'm limited for space above me, so that means I'll keep it at my chest. The second exercise will be a wall sit with can-cans. So for the wall sit, you need to make sure that you can sit with your lower back flat against the wall. Your knees will be approximately at 90 degrees along with your hips. From here, hands are either at your hips or across your shoulders with your feet together so that when you go into the can-can, you can maintain balance. You are trying to straighten your leg as much as possible, and for this, there will be a countdown where we're going up and over the box 5 times each side, and then the can-can will be 3 times each leg. We need to get through 3 rounds of that, so it will be 5 step overs per side, 3 can-cans per leg, and then that will be the ending finisher. So once again, you're looking to get through this as quickly as possible, but don't rush through it to compromise, leading to you to compromise the form. So, important thing, if you do have any objects around where you're stepping over, please make sure that you clear it so that you don't accidentally trip over the object. There's nothing worse than stepping off and you actually end up hurting yourself because either something tripped you or you slip. Yeah, so we're getting ready, starting off with our 5 per side of the weighted step overs. So it's up, driving through the leg, and controlling the weight on the other side. That's 3, that's 4, and that's 5. Then you go into your can-cans, wall sit position, get your feet together, and you're straightening the leg as you're changing over. Good. That will be round number 1, 2 more to go. And that's 5 to the side. Back into my can-cans. We're almost there. Good. And finishing up, please make sure that you do have a good stepping. Your legs are going to be quite fatigued, and you don't want to trip at this point. Last one to the side. Finishing up with your final 3 per side for the can-cans. Well done. Good stuff. All right, so you can have a quick water break. Keep your water bottle nearby so that you can continue with a stretch to wrap it up. So what we'll do is we'll start off by laying flat on our back, hug the knees, and gently rock back and forward. And then we're going to a figure of 4. So we'll keep the knees bent, just place one ankle on the opposite knee. You then have the option of hugging your knees in whichever way you prefer. Just make sure that you do feel a little bit of a stretch in the glute of the leg that's being bent. Changing over, so bringing the opposite ankle onto the knee. Then from there, what we'll do is we'll drop the knees across the body. You're going to try to keep the shoulders flat while you look towards the opposite side. Changing over, so we need to change our feet over as well. From there, we'll go flat on our back again. This time, straighten one leg, holding behind the other thigh, and you straighten your knee as much as possible while you pull your toes towards your chest. Changing over to the other side. Then from there, we'll change over onto our stomachs. We're going to push our toes away from our body as we lift our chest away from the ground. Try to relax the shoulders if you can. And then keeping the ankles as they are, we'll push our hips all the way back onto our heels while we straighten our hands and reach as far forward as possible. Walking your hands over to the right hand side. And then over to the left hand side. Hands back to the center. What we'll do is we'll flatten our heels and we walk our hands towards our feet, and we'll slowly stand from there. And that concludes our 45-minute session. I hope that you all enjoyed that and you're able to get a good start to your week. Please make sure that you follow our pages on social media so you can check out the other classes provided by the Sports Science Institute of South Africa. You can also check out the Total Sport pages on Instagram to see when the other classes are. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.